Yes, there's a few items of note underneath consent. I did want to make one mention, the temporary construction easement agreement and the approval of plat. That is related to the district's property on Sale Road, and that is granting the developer temporary construction access to our district property to complete site improvements that will benefit our future development with the school district's adjacent land. Also, there is the approval of the 25-26 lunch fees. And we are recommending only the required increase of 10 cents for the lunch cost, and that is required as part of the paid lunch equity provision of the National School Lunch Program. So a modest increase, and otherwise we will, hold the prices. There are board policy updates that are listed under item 310. And then finally, as we shared with you in March, there was a final site agreement that was discussed at the March board meeting as we're seeking to improve our website presence with an upgraded template, and we were due for a contract renewal anyway. So that's the points of note for the consent items.
Before we go ahead, I do have a question about the final site portion. When we did leave it off, there were multiple options as far as the templates. The agreement we're approving is the financial agreement. Is the next step as far as the templates, or is it just from here on it'll be taken care? Because I see there's a creative services cost. Is that them doing a lot of that work, or is there more to do on our end?
So that's the phase that we're readying ourselves for right now with the different template options. And then what happens behind the scenes is our current site stays active, and then there's a whole integration of content, and then also that support of streamlining and making it more user-friendly and increasing the ability to navigate.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Are there any questions on any of the consent agenda items? If not, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Mr. Schoenberg?
Aye.
Mrs. Tonelli?
Aye.
Mr. Blount?
Aye.
Mr. Cronin?
Aye.
Mr. McGowan?
Aye.
Mrs. Munson?
Aye.
Mrs. Conquest?
Aye, motion carries. Next, we'll move on to our action item, which is acceptance of donation from Aux Sable PTO.
Well, I see Principal Underhill out there, but I'll speak on her behalf. She submitted this acceptance of a donation. Incredibly generous donation that has been the effort of a tremendous fundraising efforts by the Aux Sable community. So Mrs. Underhill shared with me that they are thrilled to accept this incredible donation from the PTO and our school families of $45,000. This is toward the development of a new outdoor learning center. This remarkable contribution was made possible through the success of the annual Fun Run and Coin Challenge. It will go towards funding a beautiful gazebo designed as a space where students can read, write, and enjoy learning in the fresh air. It's more than just an addition to our campus, it's a reflection of our community's unwavering support for education and innovation. It aligns with our district's mission to cultivate a safe, engaging, and authentic learning environment that promotes student confidence and growth. It will offer flexible seating that enhances learning through hands-on, meaningful experiences beyond the traditional classroom. So Mrs. Underhill is working with our Director of Facilities and with the PTO to help coordinate the effort. There will be some support by the district for that installation, including concrete work and some of the installation costs. So there is a contribution by the district of approximately $7,110. However, that large donation by the PTO is the gift that we're seeking your acceptance on this evening.
Any questions on that? It's a pretty remarkable fundraiser. Can't wait to see it. With that, I need a motion to approve the acceptance of donation from Aux Sable PTO as presented.
Motion to approve as presented.
I will second.
Mr. McGowan?
Aye.
Mr. Blount?
Aye.
Mr. Cronin?
Aye.
Mrs. Munson?
Aye.
Mr. Schoenberg?
Aye.
Mrs. Tonelli?
Aye.
Mrs. Conquest?
Aye, motion carries. We will move on to discussion and information items. Assessment data is first.
Okay, we're going to do a little change if that's okay, and we're going to invite our instructional coaches presentation to go first. It's actually been in the blink of an eye. I watched their presentation last May when I was on the agenda, and now I'm back this year, and they're here this evening. So a whole year has passed, and they're here to share with us some of their incredible work and progress that they have made during the last year. So Mrs. McCarroll will provide us with an introduction, and then we will welcome up some of our coaches to fill you in what's going on in the coaching world.
Thank you. Yeah, really proud of the work that the instructional coaches have done, and they've kind of gathered some of the data that they've collected over the course of the year, talk a little bit about what they've been doing and what they look to continue to do. So I'll go ahead and take it to them.
Okay, hi. We obviously are the instructional coaches, but we'll introduce because we know there's some new faces. So I'm Ashley Webb. I'm at Jones Elementary.
Jacqueline Tadley at MES. Laura Petrick, school district coach. Megan Goolsby, middle intermediate school.
Holly Klosowski, I'm at the junior high.
Stephanie Zabellany, also at the junior high.
I'm Lisa Lara, I'm at MIS.
John C. New Walnut Trails.
Jamie Felias, I'm at Ox.
Now we're going to quiz you all on the names. Okay, so we are actually super excited this year. I know this is our third year presenting to you guys, and we have worked really hard this year to try and implement some new things to get some more staff participation, since that was one of our main goals. So we have really worked hard on new professional development. We've worked with our new coaches that we've added. We've continued to do all of our collaboration that we have across the district and other districts when we go to our conferences. And we really tried to expand our support to all staff. So we were super excited to share. We were in the 70% the last 2 years. So this year we've actually had 84% of the staff that's participated in all of our professional development and our cycles and everything that we've done with them. It was super cool because I know we were sitting there gathering it nervous, knowing last year we shared it with you guys thinking, how are we going to get to everybody? So this was something that we were super proud of. So we kind of just looked at it all together and thought adding the additional coaches, the district coaches have helped because they come in and help us with a bunch of different things and are able to outreach to all the other schools as well. And then we also kind of started developing and looking into some other coaching frameworks to help us add more cycles in there. And then we actually have had a lot that signed up for our yearbook club study that we've been doing, and we've reached a lot of teachers through that. But implementing CHAMPS has helped us kind of connect with other teachers. And then we also have started doing a lot of learning walks where teachers are going in and out of other classrooms and seeing the awesome things that are happening. So it's really, I think we just sat there and thought those are the things that have really helped us reach that 84% this year.
So are you doing the learning walks into teachers that are not participating? I mean, to kind of...
Usually it's honestly, I know some buildings, it's kind of everyone just comes in and out and it's just an open door. But I think it's opened it to teachers who normally wouldn't work with us and they want to go see other teachers and then they go in there and then they want to implement those strategies. So it's really pulled in other people to be like, oh, I want to go see that. And then it lends it, like kind of opens the door for us to then step in and say, well, let's help you implement it in your classroom. So.
And congratulations. I mean, that's huge going up.
Yeah, it was awesome.
13%.
So as coaches, we strive to meet certain goals that are in the District 201 strategic plan that ultimately works to support the Minooka Portrait of a Graduate. Okay. And so your Minooka coaches support the following 3 long-range goals by demonstrating continuous improvement in student growth and achievement, cultivating a safe, engaging, and authentic learning environment, and supporting a positive and productive working environment. So as we continue through our slides, we'll discuss some specific evidence, some of which Ashley already mentioned, and some additional things as well of each of these goals.
Right? So this year we have done a lot of work trying to grow with our professional learning, which in turn has really helped us connect with our teachers and our students. Now, I won't talk about all of them up here, but I will highlight a few that we really liked. In the fall, we went to NIU Naperville, where we went to ICIC, which is the Illinois Council for Instructional Coaches, and we had a chance to collaborate with coaches across the state, not only to learn from them, but then also to hear some of their ideas to implement back in our classrooms. And then this spring, we also returned to NIU Naperville, where we had the opportunity to see Diane Sweeney talk. She's an instructional coach as well as an author, and she focuses on a different framework called student-centered coaching, and that's something that we want to implement into our coaching toolbox in the upcoming school year. We had a chance to have our tech coach, Haley Bazan. She went to IdeaCon, which is basically like all things tech ed, and she was super excited to take the stuff she learned and bring it back to our teachers and our students. And then an additional thing that we had an opportunity to do was a lot more collaboration with Erica Martinez and her multilingual department, where we went to Biliteracy Squared and then ESSA's multilingual conference, and that really helped us bring more multilingual strategies to help with our students of that population. Probably, though, our most favorite conference that we went to, which was Learning Forward, and I won't talk about that. I'll let Holly share a little bit more information.
I know, it has to go further now. Tallest to shortest. All right, so last year we were excited to go to the Learning Forward conference in Washington, D.C. It was such an amazing learning experience. We really wanted to go again, so we decided, why not really challenge ourselves and see if they would accept a presentation from us. So we decided we were going to create this presentation called Creating a Culture of Care. We put it out there, and 855 different presentations were submitted, and only 240 of them were able to present at Learning Forward this year in Denver, and we were chosen to be one of those. And although it was incredibly nerve-wracking, it was a really excellent learning experience, on top of the fact that we also got to, again, experience Learning Forward and bring all that learning. So we really just wanted to take all of the cool things that we've been doing here in Minooka and just spread them out across the country and even the world, because there's people from everywhere at this conference. So we had a really full session. I think we had over 64 people. It included building level and district level admin, coaches, teachers, even some social workers. So it was just an amazing experience to get out there and be able to do that in front of people. But we also learned while we were there. So Lisa's going to tell you about that.
All right, these are some of the things that we learned while out in the Learning Forward conference. This hits strategic goal number 2. The implementation of new instructional strategies is always huge for us. That's what we do. Teachers are always looking for new engagement strategies. So we will implement these during cycles. We'll come into their classrooms to model. We also throw these strategies into our Fab Fun kits. We as coaches, when we're presenting, we like to have new engagement strategies so that when we're presenting, then teachers can take that back to their classrooms as well. Teaching tidbits, we know how precious a teacher's time is. So when we have a longer PD, we're able to chunk it into more manageable little tidbits so that they can walk away with a 10, 15-minute presentation rather than an hour-long presentation. We brought back the Healthy Teachers, Happy Classroom session that some of us attended at the Learning Forward conference, and we showcased that at the March Institute for Teachers. We learned how to design high-quality professional learning. So after attending a session, learning about adult learners and what we need when we are learning, we have made sure to include more engagement strategies when we're presenting. We use simpler slides and we use handouts with fill-in-the-blanks to keep our audience more engaged. Learning walks, which Ashley already talked about. This is something that all of our buildings have initiated this year, and we'll continue to tweak that process. And then another big learn was revising the MTSS governing doc, which Laura and Holly have done a wonderful job with this year. So we thank you again for the learning opportunity that has really impacted our coaching practices.
All right, a lot of our work. Sorry. So when we are supporting our teachers with our long-range academic achievement goal, a lot of that takes place in our coaching cycles, and we're working really hard to get as many teachers involved in those cycles as possible. The graphic on the screen sort of shows the breakdown of the cycles that we worked on this year with teachers. And so you can see that about 11% of our cycles were focused on lesson planning within our curriculum.
About 33% of cycles centered on behavior management. Ashley mentioned CHAMPS. We've done a lot of work with that. We've really focused in on the ratio of interactions, decreasing corrections, consistent corrections, and CHAMPS reward systems in those cycles. 5% of our cycles were focused on incorporating the writing revolution strategies into writing instruction to really build the students' foundational writing skills. Math achievement cycles took up about 15%, with small group planning, math station planning, and fact fluency achievement. Literacy achievement cycles focused on small group planning again with an emphasis on differentiated phonics instruction. And then engagement took up 29%, and that's really focusing on incorporating higher levels of student engagement during direct instruction through the use of cooperative learning strategies, total participation techniques, and intentional movement.
Can I ask a question real quick about this chart? So will a teacher, for example, come to the coach and say, this is something that I'd like the cycle to be about? Or is it more collaborative where the coach might say, you came to me about literacy, but it looks like our problem is really in planning, and we need to point in this direction. So how do we decide what the cycle is focused on, I guess is my question.
Mm-hmm. So the coaching cycles follow the gym night cycle, and the first phase is the identify stage. And it's a very collaborative partnership that we enter into with teachers. So sometimes teachers do have an idea of what they want to work on, but we still identify that that's the right thing together by either video recording a lesson, collecting data, having some student evidence data that we can look at, and kind of really sort of rally around that in some way. Then we create a goal from that. So they create a peers goal that's student-centered and go from there.
So I know I put you on the spot a little bit. That's a really good answer. I had no doubt that if any folks would have a good answer, it's the instructional coach display. So thank you for doing that.
Sure.
One of our more popular ways to get some of those teachers involved, maybe that we don't have in a cycle, is through our book studies, maybe because we feed them. But I think we'll take some credit for the choice of text this year. This was our first year-long book study, so we actually stayed with the same text all year. You can see on the screen, it's Teach Happier this school year. This text is organized in kind of a weekly manner of these small little shifts that teachers can do to find more positivity and joy in their personal and professional lives. So we were able to meet with them monthly, again, give them a little snack, some coffee, and discuss and reflect together. It truly was a bonding experience with a lot of the staff, and figuring out a lot of us have the same struggles, personal, professionally, and kind of problem solve and find some solutions that way. So a lot of positive feedback. We did have 42% of the staff participate, and so we're looking forward to our next book study.
Another way that we support our teachers outside of cycles is with our Fab Fun Kits, and these are quarterly subscriptions. And this year we did something a little bit different where we offered our teachers some choice between a couple of different categories each quarter. Some of our strategies that they could choose from, or I guess you could say like categories, included classroom management, incorporating CHAMPS initiatives, engagement strategies, building vocabulary, and some specific strategies that they could have chosen from there or that were packaged and ready to go for them included, whip around, numbered heads, rally coach, something called Find Someone Who, heads together, airplane stacking. There were SEL embedded strategies. So things to really build connections and also get the students collaborating, discussing more, and then building their knowledge as well. We do give the teachers a reflection survey at the end of each quarter, those who have participated, and 100% of respondents said that they would continue to use the strategy in their classrooms, even though the trial period, as it were, was over. So.
Another way that we have thank you. Another way that we've aligned with strategic goal number 1 is through professional development. As coaches, we've had the privilege this year to present at in-service days, early release, school improvement days, after school meetings as well as team meetings throughout the course of the school day. In March, actually, just like Lisa was talking about, we were able to present to the staff Healthy Teachers, Happy Classrooms. And that was after we met Marcia Tate, who is an author at Learning Forward in Denver. And you guys, she is fantastic. There was about a group of 5 of us that got to spend the entire day with her, and we were energized for the entire day. So we were just so elated to bring back some of the ideas that she had presented to us at Learning Forward to our entire staff. Beyond that, as you see on the screen there, there's other PD presentations that we put on this year. That includes talking more about CHAMPS, some technology including IXL and Google, also vocabulary strategies, Oracy. We did IAR presentations, and up there as well some more with Wit and Wisdom.
And so at this point in the year, just like we asked the teachers to do, and having this meeting today helps do also, is just that reflecting on the year that was and our successes and where we can have growth, and then planning when we're right back here in August and things we can do next year. So this is a partial list, certainly not comprehensive. Number 1 in bold, Mr. Cronin already mentioned. Lots of participation with us this year, but okay, the staff members that haven't been spending as much time with us, or that we've been doing lots of other work with, but not maybe those goal-centered, data-based cycle work. How can we reach those staff members? So that is one thing we're working on here as teachers are starting to pack up classrooms, and we have a little more time to look forward to next year. For example, my first thing tomorrow relates to, for myself personally, relates to math word problem work that I want to have ready to go for that first day in August when teachers are in, that I can be sharing out, hey, here's something that we can be collaborating on together. Also looking, it was mentioned earlier, some of the Diane Sweeney's work related to the student-centered coaching, and she has a short 2-3 week cycle that we were thinking would tie in great with the PLC process, as for example, as another way to get staff members working with us around student achievement and data and things. Also looking at, we just went over PD, what will next year look like related to district goals, related to building teacher wants, our own PD here over the summer, lots of Amazon books, I think, being dropped off at the houses the next couple of months. And so those are just a lot of the things that we look forward to having next year as we continue to grow the coaching program here in Minooka. I thought somebody had that one. I was the last one. All right.
I never imagined when we started this 3 years ago that you guys would present to a group that fast. That's pretty remarkable. Also, congratulations on your higher amounts of reaching your staff members. I was like taking notes over here as a new teacher. I'd love to spend a day with you guys. So the resources that you guys have. So excellent job. We always love hearing from you. Any other comments from the board?
I'm just curious. I mean, do the teachers feel more gratified? Do they have a feeling that they're connecting with the students? Are their performances getting better? I mean, is there a feeling there, or is it still 3 years in, still kind of?
It is, yeah. I mean, you get to celebrate, especially if they're doing longer work with us. If they're spending a couple of weeks looking at student data, they have set a goal for a target they want to reach in an area they want to improve, or we're in an area where they want to see student achievement increase. At the end, there's success in that where we get to share out, hey, you had set this number, or we get to look at, personally, I had one, just for example, we're going to be looking at data in a second, but she had a targeted group with myself that we were looking at, the things we were working on in her classroom was related to a subset of her students, and Matt came back and I got to circle on there, look where all these students are, way up here, and, doing amazing work on our own, but part of getting to celebrate, hey, that work that we were doing together, you're seeing it here in the achievement data of the students here at the end of the year. So yeah, there always gets to be, like, the numbers get to celebrate what they're doing.
And I think we see it build too. We'll work with the teacher, we'll finish a cycle, and they're like, okay, I'm ready for the next thing. Like, they get this feeling of, oh yeah, look how much my students grew, look how something that seems a little more minor, we're really getting into that deep, like with their instructional strategies.
So is it a pretty broad group of teachers? I mean, like all ages? Because I can see like an older
That's what I wanted to
veteran
do.
teacher who might be getting a rut of like, I've been doing this for 20 years, so you are reaching.
Most of them are veteran, a lot of them are veteran, to be honest. Like, we always work with the new teachers, but like, a lot of the ones I work with this year have been teaching longer than I have, so.
Good, that's good to hear. Good.
I-
Great job. Oh, go ahead.
You done? I was just curious, like on the 42% participated in the book study, did it all lean toward one particular building, like, or is it pretty even around the district?
I think the numbers varied per building. I mean, you know, some of them we had more, some of them we had less. You know, I had a small amount at my building that I was working with, but every single time I had every single person show up. So I think it definitely varies.
So before, I'm sure someone else wants to say something, but from this side of the table, it's just a remarkable that it's clear, first of all, that you're all really high quality educators, and also that you like each other a lot and you get along. And as a group, it's clearly a well-intended dynamic group. And I think that's the only way that it works so well is the energy just here from you all is contagious. So I'm sure in the buildings it is as well. So just those two things, that you all like each other and you're so qualified, is where it begins. So I give you all it's not the administration pointing you in the right direction, or the trainings are great, but it comes down to you all doing the work and being energetic. So thank you for that.
Thank you all for doing what you're doing. And I have a 3-part question for you. What would you say, and that's good, it's a good thing. What would you say your biggest challenge is or has been?
I mean, as a group, I could say that we've had a lot of conversations around recruitment, right? From our first year, we all are very much people who are just like ready to go and get in there. And so the challenge of sort of like building this up from the beginning, and we're seeing the results, so that's great, but it's the day-to-day of making sure we're getting to reach as many teachers as possible. From my perspective, I think it's one of the bigger ones.
In getting more teachers on those longer cycles, we've definitely had a lot of teachers work with us this year. But if I had my way, I could do a full cycle with every teacher in the building. That's what our goal is. So just getting to that point where that's just the norm. And it's only been 3 years, but we're definitely moving that. We're moving towards that, but that's what we really want, is for the norm to be, like, you're not in a cycle, like, why not? We're not there yet, but we're definitely getting a lot closer.
Thanks. Any other comments on that?
I would have to agree, yeah.
Okay.
In being my first year, excited, ready to go. I, as a teacher, utilized the coach and loved it. And so, just kind of figuring out that, like, I want to work with you. That hesitation, and what can we implement that we're not already doing to kind of get some of those hesitant teachers in. And two, figuring out, like, time of year. When we're around Christmas, we know, like, teachers aren't ready to dive into something deep, or we're at the end of the year here. So just kind of seeing how our role changes throughout the year and just brainstorming. It's been really cool. Everyone is so brilliant. So sometimes we sit down and we solve it right then. Oh my gosh, we should do this more often. So just, again, finding those new ways to bring in those hesitant, or reluctant teachers.
And I feel like we've been trying to build relationships. We're trying different things. Like Haley, our tech coach, she's been really great. She's come in 1 or 2 times to each of our buildings to do some sort of tech tip, and then that kind of gets teachers in, and then we all kind of talk to them. So we're learning new ways to try to get more business. Networking. Yes, networking.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. And what about the best accomplishment, would you say? You've mentioned a lot, but just...
I mean, I think when you're working with a teacher and then seeing that success, kind of like what we said, I mean, we also sent out an end-of-cycle survey, and again, the respondents, they said 100% would do another cycle with us. So it gets them excited to do another cycle, and it makes us excited to do that too.
And
I love the kid aspect of it, so I love being able to work with the kids, and we've shared a couple of ours, but like one of the ones we've had two, they were younger, but they came in knowing like 0 letters. I know, thinking like first grade, so they knew none of their letters, none of their numbers, and we did a bunch of like stuff in her cycle, and by the end they knew all of them but like one, upper, lower, and all their numbers. So I remember just looking at the teacher like, do you not see where they came from? And it was like a super cool thing. And then I know Patrick was helping out with that one, so it was cool because we tag team. But now we see the kids in the hallway, we're like hugging them, like, oh my God, you did awesome. So like seeing that was super cool because we don't get to be with the kids very often. So seeing their achievement, I think has been the best reward of the whole thing.
Thanks.
So when does the cycle start? Does the cycle start right at the beginning of the year, or?
And whenever the teacher's ready.
Yeah, it's a rolling, like, so you come to me, that first week, or it can just be any time, something came up in class, or you got feedback from a peer administrator, or just reflecting yourself. So yeah, it can be just any time you want, as long as, if a coach has several going, they may be like, if you can wait 2 weeks and I finish up, because then I'll have the time with you, but otherwise it's, open door, and they know how to get a hold of us, and let's have a conversation.
When we went to the Diane Sweeney conference, if you're doing more of an academic type goal, you might want to start at the beginning of the topic or beginning of the module and go through the focusing questions. So you might have a better starting point and end point based off of what their goal is, what they want their goal to be.
And Mr. Blount, just to go back to your question, a couple more shining moments I think for this year is we started PLCs at MAS this year, which are professional learning communities, and it's just brought teams together that we have never had before, and just the feedback from staff has been so great about how they've had time now to meet and talk about students and how they can do better in the classroom. So I think that's a humongous shining moment for the coaches as well. And then one more, Lisa and I were in our office at the end of last week, and we had a teacher come in and she goes, please tell me you're gonna be here next year. And I just thought that was such a great moment that she's a newer teacher into our building, that she felt that she could find us as a place that if she ever needed anything, we were just there to always support her. So I think beyond the cycles, we offer support too for our staff.
That's excellent.
A few things at the junior high, just to second the PLC. We've seen a lot of success and growth in that area with our teachers. Just the appreciation and the excitement and the collaboration and just how that has built over the school year has just been tremendous. And then also, I know Learning Walks came up earlier in the presentation, but Holly and I were just super excited. That was one of our best things this year is teachers tend to be really departmentally focused at the junior high, so to have teachers go into other teachers' classrooms that teach subjects that are not their own, and they're walking away with an excitement and like ideas and strategies was so amazing. And they wanted to, I think almost all of them, if not all of them, wanted to do an additional learning walk. So it wasn't just a one and done. We held 3, and they wanted to go on all of them to see even more teachers. So that was a success for us.
Thanks so much for sharing. Last one, I'm sorry, guys. Last one, but this is good. Thank you. What can we do to support you better?
Well, I think you guys are already doing a fantastic job supporting us. We feel so supported by not only you guys, but Adrian and our building admin as well. So thank you for allowing us to be here to share some of the things that we're doing and always supporting us.
Thanks for being nice to us when we come. Some of us are.
I think it's pretty remarkable in 3 years what you guys have accomplished, and I think it was Mr. Chamberg that said like your energy and your bond. I literally want to hang out with you guys for a day and learn how to be a good teacher. So I really appreciate the work you're doing, and you're definitely an asset to 201 and our teachers. So I look forward to the next update. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Cronin wants you to do the official walk. Coaches, we would like to recognize you. Give them some pencils.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you, coaches. We truly appreciate you being here and all the hard work that you continue to do. Yeah. Awesome group of educators. Thank you all. Before we move on into our academic data presentation for our spring 2025, I have one other important announcement. In the consolidated agenda this evening, you approved on the personnel report the hiring of a new leader joining us in Minooka 201 that's coming to us with more than 20 years of experience supporting special education learners and also as a practicing speech language pathologist. So she will be joining us as an assistant director of student services. So we're incredibly excited to welcome Mrs. Lori Jepson. Lori, stand up so we can put a face with a name. And she's going to be a great asset to our team here in Minooka 201. So welcome. We're excited to have you.
I also noticed we had an assistant principal that just can't quit 201 on the agenda. Dr. Chesrick.
Yes. Yeah, Dr. Chesrick will be joining us at Aux Sable in the fall for a month to support a leave of absence. And so we kind of get this like double whammy of support for assistant principal role and for Principal Underhill. So we're excited.
It seems silly. It should not be, she shouldn't be my AP.
No, but we'll take it for all it's worth, right? We get some free principal mentoring in there. We get the assistant principal. I'm excited. I think it's going to be great for Aux and for Principal Underhill. Awesome. So great community. So Lori, if you can't tell, you're joining an amazing learning community here in Minooka 201, and you will have no shortage of support in your colleagues and everything. So we're very excited to have you. Thank you. All right. And we'll now transition to our academic data presentation. So Chief Academic Officer Adrienne McCarroll will kick it off.
I will do my best to be as engaging as they were. That's a tough pill to swallow there. Yeah, it is. It is. We're going to take a look at some academic and SEL data. We finished our MAP testing last Monday, so we'll dive into that a little bit. And then our DESA data, our SEL component there, and our core phonics screener data was wrapped up on Friday. So I was able to get that all situated for us to review as well. And just a reminder, as we look at these things, we're talking about strategic goal 1, a little bit of 2 and 3 too, but with the growth and achievement of our students, it's a lot of strategic goal 1. To further the district's curriculum vision by assuring program and curricular consistency and coherence, and then utilizing those best instructional practices and technology. We do that to extend learning opportunities within and beyond the classroom. And then that personalized learning to enable each student to be responsible and accountable for his or her learning results. Okay. So MAP data is up first. You'll see the spring. This last week we pulled the data, the math cohorts, the RIT scores. So these, just a reminder that these are the 2020 norms. We do have new norms coming out this summer. And what I did here, red means it's below the national, the norm data there for MAP. Blue means it's above. And then if you follow the colors, that follows a group of students throughout the years. Okay. So we've got 5 years of data here. This demonstrates, really, if you look at it, we did have some reds in 2021 through 2023, but the last 2 years for our math data, we've been above the RIT score norm, or the average, so to say. So this demonstrates that our kids are achieving. Our students are on average achieving higher RIT scores as they move through grade levels and as we look historically at grade levels. So you can follow that cohort group and you can see those numbers increasing, but then if you look across the grade level, you see those numbers also increasing too, which is really good. I wanted to also, the next slide just takes the same data, but puts it into percentiles for you. For me, sometimes it just makes it a little easier to look at. So it's basically the same data, I just use the percentiles. So 50% is the norm. Again, the red means they were below the 50% norm, blue is above. So we're seeing a couple of things here that I want to talk about, but again, our kids are generally achieving and our students on average are growing in their achievement percentile. So if you see if you follow the colors, those grade levels, most of the time you'll see that grade level percentile increase too. We do typically see the dip in third grade, so if you follow like the yellow color that starts second grade, that 54%, we have that dip in third grade, 50%. Again, some of that is that test switches from the K2 test to the 3-5, which the kids cannot have it read out loud to them. The K2 test, you can press a button and you listen to it and you answer the question. So our kids are learning to read while they're reading to learn, but you almost always see that data bounce back in fourth grade. But I did notice if you look through third grade, the years, we are continuing to get better with our percentiles. And then if you look from second to third grade, you tend to see dips, but our dip is diminishing a little bit too there, which is pretty cool. And I think that speaks a lot to what our administrators and our teachers are doing through the lens of PLCs. We're really honing in on data to try to get our kids growing. Overall, they're pretty happy with some of our achievement levels, but I think our growth levels we want to look to increase, which is what I'm going to look at next. But any questions on this so far? Okay. So, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just looking at it. So yeah, I see a lot of improvement, and then I think about COVID, right?
Yeah.
Coming out of COVID, and I know my kids had struggled to get back on task and just doing something in the right way. But then I'm looking here at first grade, the math cohort percentage, and I know that you spoke to this a bit, but so yeah, it went to 54%, and then going all the way to 2025, and it dropped to that 53. So it was at 66% in 2024, and then went to 53% in fifth grade in 2025, because it's following them, right?
Correct.
Wait, what do you think that could possibly be?
That's a great question. That is something Mrs. Pico and I have been talking about a little bit, because you see it a little bit in our MAP scores too. One of the things I will say, I think across the board you're seeing increases.
Yeah.
But if you also look from fourth to fifth grade in general, you see that trend happening a little bit too. Like if you whatever cohort you follow, you tend to see a little bit of a dip in that fifth grade number. One of the things we do see at fifth grade is the fact fluency is really hindering some of our students' success. So our coaches have done a lot of work. I know the admin are doing a lot of work through PLCs, is trying to find some small group time for the math and really honing in on some fact fluency things. It's hard to do because you want to get through all the curriculum stuff, but what we're finding is when we're taking the time to do that, you really see the payout in the MAP scores, and hopefully the IAR scores will show that too. But we do recognize that there's some discrepancies there, in particular with our third and fifth grade data. But we know a lot of it when I'm working on curriculum meetings and PLCs with Mrs. Pico and the coaches, that fact fluency is, they're having a hard time getting through some of the curriculum materials because the kids just don't quite have that automaticity yet. We just recently went to, the ROE has some instructional coaches in terms of math and reading. And we had the math coach come to our district about a week and a half ago and said research is showing that you have to balance math facts, that memorization, with the conceptual understanding of it. If you just try to do flashcards memorizing, that's not where the rubber's meeting the road with the data. Additionally, the kind of the number one way kids kind of seem to do those things is when you kind of gamify some of those skills. And what they said is gamifying with partner work. That seems to be really where kids are seeing growth, and you do some games, but they see the concept, so they might be working with manipulatives or tiles like red and yellow, positive, negative, to make make number sentences and stuff. So they're actually using the manipulatives, whether it's through technology or actually hands-on manipulatives, and then coming up with that automaticity, fact fluency to be able to get to those numbers faster. So those are just some of the things we're trying to work on.
You know, I think you're right too. After you said it, it hit me. So yesterday, fortunately, we had graduation, right? Minnie graduated, and the valedictorian yesterday in her speech, she spoke about how as soon as, you know, everyone felt like they were getting along and getting things right in a building, then 2 more years they switched, and then they switch again, right? And so she was speaking about going from sophomore year to then junior year, right? And she's an athlete and being around all of that. However, she still said, I was getting used to it, and then we switched again. So to your point, 4th grade, now switching to a new building, 5th grade, 5th to 6th grade, now they're up, now switching again. So kids, and everyone's different, right? And so I think, that could have something to do with it.
Well, you bring up a good point too, which is kind of one of the reasons of many that when we started to look at instructional minutes and what we can kind of make tighter. So curricular meetings, some teams might have math at the end of the day, some have it at the beginning of the day, some of their minutes were chunked up differently. And sometimes when then they're coming to the intermediate school, we have different pacings going on because this building was able to get to this, but this building wasn't, and that. So kind of trying to tie up our instructional minutes a little bit about what is being taught during the portion of the day and the actual minute allotment for those things. That, you know, kind of just by design, that new schedule came out for the K-4 buildings. We're hoping that will help tighten up a little bit of this too, because if people are taking their best guess on what to skip and what to not, okay, but then when you take those kids and mix them up for the next grade level, whether it's 2nd to 3rd or 3rd to 4th, different kids have different gaps. And then teachers are trying to do that. And then we're doing that with 4 buildings trying to come to 1. So there's just some things that we're trying to tighten up on the curricular side on our end to see if there's some achievement growth data shifts from that too.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on that so far? All right, so this is fall to spring, so beginning of the year to end of the year growth. All right, so this just is, what we were looking at earlier is kind of achievement levels, and that's why I said, like, our kids are achieving well. They achieve on average higher than other schools a little bit. But when you look at our fall to spring growth, the blue bars is the observed growth, and that diamond is where they were projected to grow. So this is pretty cool. If you look from fall to spring, we see just about everybody except 7th grade within a point there, but they grew or exceeded their projected growth, right? So students are generally growing where we expect them to grow from fall to spring. But to us, like, this just isn't quite good enough. And when we start to look at our IR scores, hopefully we see some growth changes in there too, but we want them to grow more than is expected, and you do see that with some of the grade levels. We're just trying to go from better to best. Now, when I shift gears and look at spring to spring, so we're talking about kind of following a cohort of students at the end of 2nd grade to the end of 3rd grade, what that looks like, and it's a little bit different of a picture for us. So from year to year, we're not always growing them as much as the norms suggest that they should. But if we look at their data from fall to spring, it shows a little bit of a different picture. So again, these are just good data pieces to look at and for us to start thinking and asking better questions to start drilling into our data, which is what the administrators are going to be doing about the next week. We just got these finalized last week. It's end of the year. We do have a lot of meetings next week scheduled with admin and their building leadership teams to kind of start diving into this data a little bit. So we have high achieving kids, and sometimes with that, it becomes more challenging to grow them because they are already achieving well. But that doesn't mean that we're not up for the challenge and we don't want to grow our kids more. So we're going to look into that a little bit. Math fluency was something I had said before, word problems, and then balancing that conceptual understanding with that memorization automaticity is something we're continuing to work on.
So let me ask you real quick, how are these, the growth projected goals generated? Because I look specifically at 5th spring to spring, they came a great distance from their projected growth, but higher up on the chart, even on the cohort, they're still meeting the norms in that sense. So where is that generated from, and how does specifically that one, I know it's spring to spring, so it's a cohort, it's not just the fifth graders today, but being above the norm and so far from the growth goal was, it didn't seem to match up.
Right, I don't disagree. So what it's telling me is, on average, our kids are achieving. They're reaching whatever threshold that MAP says they need to be at. And more than half of our kids, in most cases, the blue, says it's happening. But if you look at the growth, we're not growing the kids necessarily where it's projecting them to grow. And that's MAP coming up with those projections based on their data. I have a couple of thoughts. I need to dig into the data to see if it works that out a little bit. So we tend to see a dip with the third grade data, right? We know that test gets a little harder. Kids aren't able to just listen to somebody read it to them. They have to do it themselves. So then comprehension comes apart. And are they looking for those math words that are telling them, whether it's an addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, whatever. But then they go into fourth grade and they figured out how to read a little bit better, and they figured out how to comprehend in those scores. I don't wonder maybe if they look at what that growth was, and then some of those kids, they expect the same growth, and then they don't achieve it, so that fifth grade, we see a bigger gap in the fifth grade data. I don't know if that's true. I need to dig into the data a little bit. MAP does not, we would have to do the data analysis on our end. I tried to contact them this week if they have a report. So they don't have a report where I can take RIT categories, so kids that scored between 170 and 175. Show me what their growth was. Show me what a RIT score, show me where these kids that scored between a 180 and 185, so I can kind of just segregate the data and see like what groups of kids are we growing and what groups of kids are we not. I can't do it based on RIT scores without us hand doing the data, so that's something I'm trying to work on for the admin to be able to do next week. They don't have a report that does that. They do have other reports that are going to allow us to disaggregate the data, but we do need to take some time to dig into that a little bit more, which is what we'll do this next week. Questions on that one? Okay, on to reading. So same kind of format I just did for math. We'll kind of walk through the reading cohort scores. Again, if you follow the colors you follow that grade level or that cohort of kids throughout the years. And then you can look across grade levels from 2021 to 2025. We are seeing a little bit more red in this area, but we are seeing some growth. Our numbers are getting closer to the 50th percentile or going over. Again, this is demonstrating achievement. On general, on average, our kids are achieving higher RIT scores most of the time. As they move through the grade levels, and then as we look at historical. So one of the things I want to say, even though we do generally see that dip in third grade, if you look from second to third grade numbers, we're still seeing growth in those numbers. And we're getting closer to that norm there. We're making gains with these kids and slowly improving our achievement scores, but we're not where we want to be yet. I do think if I look at in terms of kind of where we are at and what we're doing curricularly, our teachers are doing some really great things, really hard things. We've embraced the science of reading, which is kind of a newer approach to us as educators in the district on how we explicitly teach some of these reading skills. But in addition, some of the uncovering I've had this last year is when we adopted Wit and Wisdom, which is, a large portion of our district utilizes that, our K-6, it was during COVID. And there was PD opportunities that we missed along the way because of that. And I don't wonder if that has something to do with kind of the fidelity of teaching some of these things, because we didn't have all of the professional development that was supposed to go along with it. Some of our coaches and most of the administrators 2 weeks ago went through a leader observation training on what your look-fors are and learning a little bit more, and it was like super eye-opening. It was like, how come we didn't have this years ago? And it just fell through the cracks. Right or wrong or otherwise, we're going to right that ship, and our coaches are going to help on trying to make sure all of our staff have the PD they need. And I think that is something that's going to help some of these reading scores as well. Additionally, it is hard, but our kids can do hard things, and it's how can we give our kids supports and scaffold for those, but then start to remove them so the kids can start to do some of these things independently, and we're going to work hard on that too. So the same data here, but again, I turned it into percentiles, just another way to look at it. So you can kind of look through and see. One of the things I'm super proud of and I want to celebrate, because we always tend to see that dip from 2nd to 3rd grade, but if you see, this is the first year in quite a while that last year, those kids in 2024 scored a 47 in the 47th percentile, and they scored in the 48th percentile. That is the first year in a long time that we've actually seen that number go up, which is just indicative of all the work that the admin and our teachers are doing through PLCs. So again, the percentiles are slowly improving in the cohort and across the grade levels, and we're closing the gaps, even some of those areas that are red. You'll see like it goes from, we're making small percentages increases. We're like 7th grade, we went from 46 to 47 to 48. 8th grade, 43, 44, 40. We're getting closer to the 50th percentile. Once we get there, we're gonna push more to get over that, but we're making movements in the right direction. We're just not where we want to be at. Questions on the cohort percentiles and achievement data? Okay. So growth, again, this is just a different visual here, but it's the same thing as the math looked at. So this is fall to spring. If you look at it, again, I want to shout out to our 3rd grade teachers. Look at like our kids are right there making the growth that they're projected to do so. 2nd grade, we see a little bit of a gap. In 5th grade, there's a smaller gap there. Again, it is consistent with the MAP data. The kids are showing expected growth from fall to spring. But if we look at that cohort over a year and go spring to spring, the data does look a little better than it did when we looked at the math data. So we have students who are generally achieving, but they're not growing like we hope. We see the 2nd grade data, we can kind of hone in and work on that, the 4th to 5th, and we do see a larger gap in the 6th to 7th. Granted, you guys can kind of see those diamonds move down because the projected growth, those numbers get smaller and smaller as you go out through the years. In terms of looking at this data though, but there's some big picture assessment pieces that I want to talk about briefly, but before I do that, are there any questions about this data?
So I don't know if it's a question, but I know we've spoken before in meetings about the 8th grade, how meaningful it is for 8th graders to be prepared and ready for high school as they leave us, and the fact that it's really a buildup. It's 3rd grade is great and 5th grade is great, but the K-8 system at 8th grade in your spring scores, that's the score that you're kind of leaving 201 with and going to high school. So I completely agree that that number is rising from that COVID time, but it's really still lower than I thought it would be at this point, to be honest, because that's the end of these kids' time here. And whether we're adjusting things or we're just going at a slower pace than we would like, I really hope that we can get that number to a point that's a lot of kids that are below the norm if that's the number. So
right.
That's a very concerning number to me, that those are the kids leaving 201. So if there's whether it's administration or instructional coaches, whatever the targeted approach is, that's what jumps off the page at me. And like I said, I don't think it's a question, but that's what really jumps off the page at me, that we have a lot more work to do, I think, in those numbers.
Yeah.
I was thinking that except for opposite with math was a huge increase. So it's interesting between the two.
Yes. Now, you do see we're trying to really, when I'm having the curricular meetings, we're looking at this data, but we're also looking at our standards. And teachers don't necessarily have a copy of the MAP questions, so they'll kind of look over a kid's shoulder to take them to see. And sometimes it's like, this is something that we haven't addressed yet, or this is something we're getting to. But now with us taking the spring MAP a little later in the year, you can kind of make the assumption, like, we've pretty much expose the kids to everything at grade level. So then what's really hone in on the data and see what's working and what's not. And some of that has been with the vertical articulations with the high school too, to talk about what their expectations are.
I don't mean to cut you off. I think that's such a great point that you just made, that I should have mentioned in my comment that being just a snapshot in a moment and a specific exam or a test, the achievement in class is not what we're looking at. We're not looking at our everyday assignments and achievement. So I should have mentioned that at the outset, that this is just one moment on a student's day. It could be a Tuesday afternoon, and this is the test they took. So I think that's a great point, that there's a lot more to the story. But when we're looking at the data, that's what we're looking at. So that's why I mentioned it.
Absolutely. And some of the other things we've talked about too is, so 5th and 8th grade, they take IR and ISA, and we have MAP at the end of the year. Are we breaking them up enough so kids don't feel like they're testing, so that MAP, the last one they took, I'm tested out, right? So we're trying to be conscious about when we schedule these two, so we're getting the most accurate data from our kids too.
Adrian, I had a comment about that.
Yeah.
I know for my 5th grader, the way the schedule went, and I believe it was the same at the junior high, it was so drawn out that she just, quit.
Yeah.
So I think that I was going to ask, how often does that schedule change? How do we account for that in these scores?
Got it. No, we do. We take that into consideration. Sometimes, for example, one of the reasons why sometimes it has to be drawn out is we have so many students that require small group testing. We can't physically test more than one test a day because there's not enough space to accommodate all of our kids. So that is something I know the schools were trying to do, because we have to offer small group testing, and a lot of those have extended time. We didn't have enough spaces to be able to conduct 2 tests a day and to try to get done with our testing schedule earlier. So we're trying, we work within the system and the building size that we have. We try to be cognizant and schedule that. That's something that we try to look at and take into consideration every year too.
I just wanted to comment that as an educator on test days, even if they do run my the regular schedule with shortened classes after that, classroom teachers aren't always diving into the next unit or reading a novel or whatever, because they don't want their kids to be so spent.
Yeah.
So it feels like even doing just 1 test a day and then running an alternate schedule, the whole day is still devoted to testing. Do you know what I'm saying?
I understand where you're coming
teachers
from.
aren't doing the same sort of rigorous activities in their classrooms on those days, or they are, and then we really are running the kids into the ground.
Okay.
Just something to think about. I know there's other districts nearby that are bigger, like Minooka, so maybe we check out what they're doing.
Absolutely.
I think that's a valid point, and to her response, I had the same question, honestly, and the logistical challenges are significant, particularly at our upper grades. So it does impact a lot of how we are able to actually move inside of this kind of very tiny box with the large number of students that we have. So if there is a way, we will figure it out, but honestly, there's a lot of constraints on that right now. And the other piece that's a moving target, I do want to keep in mind that MAP assessment is a formative tool for us to look at programmatic decisions and also to look at instructional decisions, and for us to use as one piece of data. In addition to that, we use local assessments. The moving target here is that state assessment, and the state assessment, Illinois Assessment of Readiness, and how they're aligning their college and career readiness benchmarks. They're currently in the process of realigning the benchmarks. There's now going to be 4 categories. There's going to be different thresholds. So what we have to do is anchor this to what that end game is, because that end game is what we need to be shooting for. So typical growth isn't enough for many of our learners. We need kids to exceed their growth in order to be on that college and career readiness trajectory. Likewise, if they're on it, do we have the right growth targets established? And then also the MAP assessment is not a duplicate of that state assessment. So there are pieces of the MAP assessment at each of the grade levels that are present and there, but they should not be our curricular focus at that particular time, because that's not curricularly or, appropriate for that grade level. So it is this really nuanced kind of juggling game to get in, use this data, but not be looking at this data as this is our end game. So I think Adrian and everyone else who touches this data all the way to our teachers are doing a phenomenal job of making sense of it and then making adjustments in response, whether it's at the teaching level or at the programmatic level. And then we have that moving target, keep in mind, and I want to mention that because we will get scale scores for IAR in this summer, but those performance levels will not be defined until August. So we will have scale scores and we can look backwards as to what they used to be. But the state of Illinois is trying to bring those on par with what we see nationally, because in many cases, the Illinois benchmark was set higher than other states, which is why you would see a story painted that would say, oh, Illinois students are performing here and these students are performing here. Well, it's because the benchmarks were set higher as a more rigorous expectation. So it's a very, it's this kind of rabbit hole that you go down anytime you look at this data. But we are using this map data as a very strong tool to help us guide and navigate all of this. And then once we have that new anchor, we will be able to bring this data back to you and talk to you in relation to how many of our kids are on track for that end game, and how are we growing groups of students and individual students in relation to where they need to be at each particular grade level. So just kind of bringing that holistic picture back to it as we look at a snapshot of our spring data.
So Rachel, would that stuff be for IAR? Those are what's changing for that?
Correct. And for the high school, they're switching back to ACT. They were once SAT, and prior to that, ACT. So it's coming back full circle, and they're readjusting their benchmarks because their benchmarks were set higher than what even, say, the College Board or ACT had set.
For example, at IAR, we had a lot of kids score level 3. We didn't have a ton, not just district, but statewide, level 4 and 5, like so meeting and exceeding. But if you looked at something like NAEP, I think for 4th grade math, we had some of the, we were one of the top 2 states in the country for our 4th grade and 8th grade math data. Well, there's a disconnect there. So yeah, in August, we went to a kind of a, ISBE assessment learning walk a couple weeks ago, and they are forming a committee together in August to set new performance levels, and it's going to be IR, ACT, ISA will have 4 consistent levels. So it's not like IR has the 5, and then the science one has 3, and ACT has they're all going to have 4, and they're all going to set them. So we'll get our preliminary data here at the end of the month or early June, but it won't have those performance indicators like Superintendent Kinder was saying. So we can pull some data working with our tech on what the old stuff was. But in August, these committees are going to meet and make these new ones so that when we get kind of the preliminary school report card, we'll be able to kind of see that, but it won't be published until October. But yes, the new, the IR reports and the school report card will have those timeline-wise according to the state. They'll be in there.
And you mentioned NWEA is changing their norms. Do they have a projected date for that?
It's sometime this summer. Usually it's July that they come out with them. And you got to remember the other norms were 2020. Those were pre-COVID norms. So I do expect those to change quite a bit.
I just wanted to mention that I think what you just said, Superintendent Kinder, is so spot on. I think that's just the perfect way to hear about this data. And I wonder if going forward, we can kind of brainstorm the ways to get those messages out. Because I know when parents receive the emails about their test scores, they're not hearing the message that was so clearly just put out. They're just seeing, this is my child's standardized test. And whether it's understood or not, that's maybe more of an our issue than a their issue, because it can be difficult to understand what it's saying in those emails. And then you're going through that test score as a result.
That is an excellent point, and that would be the ideal, because as a parent, you get these different reports, you get report cards, and you think one thing is telling you something, and then you get something else that's telling you a different story, and you're like, what does this mean? So our goal is to, make sense of it, as the state's trying to also make sense of it, but then to be able to communicate that to parents. There's nothing worse than a parent feeling like misled or confused about their child's progress. when I was a high school administrator and I had parents from the junior high or the middle school saying, but my kid was a straight A student. You know, she was in all honors classes. And I'm like, she's not on track and she needs this extra reading support. And this is, you know, what this data tells me. And parents were dumbfounded. And it's not any parent's fault. It's just that the system hasn't been designed to necessarily effectively communicate growth and achievement effectively. And so we have some, you know, we think our kids are doing great. And then we have a state test that says they're below proficiency level. That's confusing, right? And then the truth really comes to be told when they get to high school or when college, and then colleges are telling us, no, they're not ready. So it is a larger, you know, pre-K, 16 conversation, but our goal here in Manuka 201, to what we can own as we make sense of it, our goal will be to improve that communication to parents and to students as well, because students, we want them to be owners of their learning, right? And to have an idea of where they stand and what they're working on to grow and achieve. And does that match their end game kind of goals as they move up in the school system?
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually one comment I was going to make. I appreciate all the information that has been shared.
Mm-hmm.
As a community member that maybe doesn't have an education background or doesn't really understand what all they're seeing, I really appreciate that we want to work on that community part. Like, you know, for example, we're looking at the different cohorts and the percentages, and I appreciate that a lot, that you put in percentages. But, you know, parent looks at this, maybe someone reviews the slides, well, why is there such a difference between the math scores and the reading scores? What's going on? But then you had mentioned, we're going to get together, we're going to go through the data, we're going to try and figure that out and see what's going on there. I think that would be a really important thing to communicate so people understand, you know, the numbers and what we plan to do with them. It's not like, oh, okay, well, here we are. No, we're going to work on it. We're going to figure out what's going on. So.
And that goes all the way to how we communicate progress and grades just on a regular basis inside the district, right, of those things that we can control. Because what does A or B mean? And, you know, those conversations about grading, those can be loaded, emotional conversations, as any educator or any parent will even tell you. But it's important that we have those, because otherwise we may not be communicating effectively around a child's true mastery of grade level standards, and what else is being communicated through that grade, and is that appropriate? So those are conversations that we have to continue to unravel and dive into as, you know, we move forward. Those things don't happen overnight, but these are great first steps to identifying some of those disconnects or seeing some of those opportunities to improve communication with our families and with our students as well.
Has there been any conversation with the changing of these benchmarks? I know, like, when you get your pre-ACT scores back for your children, it shows, like, if this is where you are today, then next year you should be in this range, and next year it has, like, a projected, you know, growth. I know there's the RIT score and things, but is there any sort of communication to families that kind of shows, like, if you're here now, does it go up through the tests so that as they get to high school, are they on track?
Report you get that MAP kind of does, that tech kind of works with, it will tell you what the projected growth is. And then when you take it, like in the spring, it will tell you the projected growth was here and here's where your child was.
I mean, do you know what these conversations of these tests meeting together, and this may be not even the right question, you might not be the right person to ask, but I'm curious if these, with their alignment of their 4 categories and all these things, if they're going to streamline that piece for families.
Gotcha. Yes.
Does that make sense?
So that's an additional component of that. So when we went a couple weeks ago to look at that, that is part of their plan. Like, they are like, does this format make sense? Does this format make sense? And we're like, as a teacher, this one. But as a parent, we think that was part of the conversation that was had the other day too. So I do think the state is also working on how to effectively communicate a little bit better. I think that's part of the
great.
Vision 2030 stuff too, is to be a little more transparent and effectively communicate some of those scores and what it means and what it doesn't mean.
Yeah, I'd be curious to follow that as it goes through. As you know, I have a junior, so first year of ACT, so it was all PSAT, MAP, PSAT, and then it's like, what is this even means. So having that kind of universal would be a great way for families to understand kind of what we're doing, what these things mean as they go through.
I think that's an excellent point. And when we have our the new benchmarks established for the state, we can see how our children performed on the IAR. And then we can do an alignment. We can even do our own internal study, but an alignment of how they have performed on MAP. So we can see, and make some predictions of like our own type of like correlation study, not probably statistically significant, but nonetheless, it would be an indicator, a guide for us to say, students who performed at this level were in, kind of this range at, winter, spring, MAP, in reading or in math. And so you start to really zone in on that. So we're not painting a false picture, or we're not shooting for average. We're not shooting, the state average is not our goal. The norm, the 50 percentile, that's not our goal. We're not trying to be, just hey, status quo average. Absolutely not. So we've got to get, we're getting smarter with the data and making sense of that and then communicating it. That's the challenge there. So we're going to continue very, with vigor, tackling this with all of the changes occurring so that we can communicate more effectively and give a guide to students and parents that helps them see how that trajectory is moving across as, the time, before they're entering into high school and waiting to take the, ACT suite of assessments when they step foot in that door.
It goes back to that first full circle of what Mr. Shainberg said. It's that benchmark of, are we churning out high school ready kids? So yes, I appreciate that. I know we derailed your,
I know.
it's a great conversation here, but.
Emily, Emily, there is a report that the teachers have access to. It's really hard to print to send home though, but it does have like your projected ACT, SAT. You can select different universal tests to see if they're on track.
And those would be pieces that we could take and put into a more like parent-friendly format that shared like kind of key pieces of detail. So think about it like we look at it from the board level all the way down to the classroom to the student level. And so you have kind of your snapshot of how that progress is looking, not just our traditional report card that gets sent home, that's either standards-based or letter grades. So that's a whole nother conversation, but those are really, really great points. And I think with the education committee, with parent feedback, and then of course with all of our teacher teams and committees, we can continue to make more sense of this and make it more and continue to have it serve its purpose, which is to communicate progress and to communicate growth and also achievement in relation to the established standard. And those are some places where we've, probably come up short as a system, speaking big picture, that we will continue to work on.
All right, on to the core phonics survey data. This is another piece of data that we have. So before I talk much about it, just a quick reminder of what it is and why it's important. So it assesses phonics and then phonics-related skills that have a high rate of application in beginning reading. It helps determine if students have mastered specific skills, and it starts with like recognition and sounds of capital letter, lowercase letter, and then we start talking about vowel sounds, long vowel, short vowel, all the way to multisyllabic words and ghost letters and all that sort of stuff. And then it tells us what specific skills they mastered and then maybe what skills they need further instruction or interventions on. And well, why is it important? Well, because phonics leads to decoding, leads to words, leads to being able to be a fluent reader and improved reading comprehension. So being able to correspond sounds and letters and words largely impacts the student's ability to read those individual words, not by memorization, but by sounding them out and looking for patterns. So the assessment that we do 3 times a year with the core phonics surveys for our K for kids, it helps determine which areas a student is likely to benefit most from systematic explicit phonics instruction. We know that teaching is a balance of science and art, but in terms of reading and phonics, there's more research indicating that there's science that's really supporting that systematic explicit instruction is absolutely key there. So I'll have the kindergarten data here first. this data looks a little different than the rest of the grade levels, partially because you'll see up at the top, the kindergarten's data is, they only assess units A through E. So they don't run the whole gamut of phonics skills. They just assess A through E, and that's upper case letter names, lower case letter names, consonant sounds, long vowel and short vowel sounds. So you'll see kindergarten data, we're moving in the right direction. And I will say, like, I'm really proud of this data. I know our administrators and our teams and our PLCs have been working on this a lot, especially at the K-4 buildings. Almost everybody has their professional learning community goals centered around this data. Teachers are using this data to drive their instruction. They're using it during their CST time, which is kind of extra time built in their day to help meet all the kids' needs. It helps enrich kids that already maybe have a good understanding of phonics or literacy skills, and it helps stretch and intervene on some of the kids that might have some skills that need improved.
I think that's extra remarkable with how much SEL challenges there's been at that kindergarten level, to see that improvement with that added challenge. And I know you've had to do, some more push into classrooms at the beginning of the year and focus on that. So that's pretty significant. Yeah.
I agree. I do think that they really hit the ground work in that first quarter with some big SEL needs. We'll talk about that in just a couple minutes with our SEL data. But in doing so, kind of building that classroom environment for these things to take place has been key. And you definitely see the data moving in the right direction. And you'll continue to see it as you see first grade, second grade, third, fourth grade. Now, starting in first grade, they have the entire screener. So even though they've only been through level K phonics and level 1, the screener covers all of the phonics skills. So those kids either maybe haven't seen or definitely haven't mastered those skills yet. So it's not like we're shooting for 100% at first grade, because we know they haven't been taught those skills. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. So we're making significant gains, but we will probably eventually hit max out points, max out percentages, because the kids just haven't been taught some of these skills yet. But you definitely see we're still growing, and some of these are really significant growth measures, and a lot of it I think has to do with the admin leading and the coaches leading the PLCs, those professional learning communities for those grade levels, and they're really honing in on this data and then using it to drive instructional decisions with their kids.
So is there a state or national max out level?
There is not. That's the one thing that, if I'm being honest, I don't like about the Core Phonics Survey. There is no baseline data that they have that they publicize. Data is good when you have something to compare it to. So what I have to compare it to is our previous year's data. There's no benchmark or normed data that the Core Phonics Survey people send out.
Well, if you're doing it from the previous year, you guys are kicking butt. I mean,
right.
This is phenomenal to see this big of a jump.
Yeah, I agree.
So good
they
job.
are just doing amazing things. And you'll see the same thing with the third and the fourth grade data. I do expect, I know a lot of our third grade teachers are still doing some phonics stuff. They're piecemeal and they're working with the coaches, but I do think when we get that level 3 foundations, that's that level 3 phonics piece that we have missing, I do expect to see some growth on these pieces, because that will get added into the mix too. And staff will actually have instructional materials to help support the needs of the kids. Questions?
Yeah, no, like Mr. Cronin was saying, it's remarkable. This might be my super positive comment of the night. This is remarkable. The first grade almost doubles really from last year to this year. So it's 19% is maybe, like you said, they're still getting it, they're learning it. But from there all the way up to 85% as they're leaving fourth grade to go to the next building, that's, yeah, there's more work to be done, of course, but that shows how hard everybody's working and that they're getting it. If we can do more to support them, or if the third grade chimes in, but they're getting the work done, that's hugely impressive.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think a large part of it is, there's obviously a learning curve when you start something new. Teachers are a little more comfortable with the material. Kids understand it. Like when we had third graders and teachers pilot some of those level 3 foundations kits, the kids were like, oh, I remember how to do this. Like, it just became second nature to them. But I think the biggest bang for our buck is really that PLC data. So the administrators and the coaches and the teachers are honing in this data and using it to drive instruction and make instructional decisions so that we're trying to grow every student. Wherever they are at in their phonics journey, we are looking to grow them. And I think that's indicative of the data that you see too. Any other questions on phonics before I move on to our SEL component? All right, so DESA stands for Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment. Okay, so you're wondering about that. So it's a behavior rating scale designed to assess social emotional competencies, or SEL, resilience, academic success in students. So the 8 categories are listed. So we do this with our kids 3 times a year. And this is an assessment piece that the staff members do on behalf of the student. So we do this 3 times a year. The fall data, winter data, and spring data, you'll see the numbers there. We've got a little bit of change from the winter to spring data. Not significant, but a little bit. And we do, I think sometimes towards the end of the year, kind of behaviors kind of creep in a little bit. But I am impressed with the need for instruction kind of being so low. Traditionally, when we look at whether it's our SEL curriculum or any type of curriculum, you look for, at least 80% of your kids not needing assistance, right? But if you look at our data, and we'll have another one here in a minute, like we're probably having additional instruction or interventions for maybe 10% of our population. That means about 90% are doing well. So that's something to kind of be proud of too. So collectively, this is the spring snapshot from kindergarten to 8th grade. You can kind of see the red is the need for instruction, so it might be a check-in or some type of intervention for some sort of SEL need. The blue is the typical range, and then the green is they have strengths in terms of SEL competencies. So traditionally, our data has shown different results. Dr. Staub and I were kind of looking at this over the last couple of days here, and you usually see higher numbers towards the beginning and towards the end, and we kind of got like little waves going on with our data a little bit here.
Yeah, we typically will see kindergarten and 8th grade showing the most amount of need. Nope, as an educator, you understand that, right? We understand our kindergartners coming in are still needing how to learn, how to be a student. And sometimes as 8th graders, you need to relearn how to be a student. But we've seen a little bit more variance throughout and a little bit more even distribution kind of throughout the grade levels. They're a variance of what we have typically seen in the past. So I was speaking with Ms. Vaquero how that's just very interesting because it's normally, you see the 2 thicker bands here and then it's really low throughout the rest of the grade levels, but now we're kind of seeing that need is a little bit more evenly distributed. Again, that blue is what we consider as typical development, and then the green is what we see as strength. So it is very good to continue to see those as being so strong. And once again, they're still by large under that 10%, which is telling us that our core curriculum in social emotional learning is meeting the needs of most students, and some students need additional programming.
And we've been looking at our SEL curriculum and the usage and implementation of it, and that's something we're going to work to continue to improve in the next school years too. But we wanted to drill down on the data a little bit because we do have some SEL curriculum teams coming up. So Dr. Staub and I pulled the next data piece for you guys, just wanted to share with you.
Right, so go back one. So just to be clear, this is good, right? I mean, under 10%.
I would say it's good, it's not great. Yeah, like Ms. McCarroll was saying before, our students are doing well, but we can always do better. So that's why we're looking with our social emotional teams and seeing what more can we do within our core curriculum to ensure that we're meeting all students' social emotional needs and giving them the skills that they need to be successful within the school, but the greater community environment as well.
I think we do see also, so within that, those small red percentages, some of those kids have really strong needs for instruction or interventions or support. So we are seeing that collectively, like when kids are in the red here in terms of SEL needs, it is kind of extensive assisted instruction or services that they need sometimes.
Okay, I'm not that smart, so just bear with me. So again, it's not that good. So it's good that we're under the 10%.
Yes.
But when you say it's not that good, do we need more in the green? And do we need to bring the?
We would love to have more in the blue and green. Yes.
Okay.
I'd love to see everybody like 5% or under. But ebbs and flows with groups of kids and needs, but yes, less red is always a bonus. So what we did with the next piece is we looked at the kids that got flagged throughout the course of the year. They do a full screener, so there's quite a bit more additional questions that get asked, and we kind of dive deeper in that they are getting some additional instruction, additional interventions in these areas. So these, again, are students that have previously been flagged as needing more intensive instruction in terms of SEL needs in one or more areas. Again, this is roughly 10% of our population, so if you talk about in the terms of an MTSS model of support, we're within that range, but we still know that these kids have some specific needs that we need to work through. So the first bar is the composite score of all of those things, but then you look at self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, etc. And we see some areas where maybe we can work on some of our core curriculum instruction, our tier 1 instruction, like self-management. So this is some of the data that we'll look at with the SEL teams and be like, okay, so when we're looking at our second step lessons, what are the lessons that really hone in on self-management skills? I will tell you, between the screener and listening to some of our staff and curricular meetings and some of our CHAMPS expectations, self-management, self-regulation are some of the two highest things that we see. So what else can we do to explicitly teach students some of these skills that we are wanting and expecting from maybe a behavioral standpoint or an SEL standpoint in class? So that's what we're going to be looking at to kind of hone in on some of the SEL curriculum supports that we can offer our kids too.
How is this compared to previous years? Since you're a data person, just curious if.
So this screen, again, is, if you go back to the last screen, that bar of red, where it's less than 10% of our students across the district, this second screen is that 10%. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's give or take about 400 students in our district that we provided the additional screener for.
Yeah, and those numbers are the actual numbers of kids. So they are roughly somewhere around 400, indicating they're around 10% of our population.
Right,
so to compare that to prior years, again, this is going to ebb and flow. You tend to see self-awareness and self-management be more concerns with younger students. Whereas that social awareness and relationship making, relationship skills really hone in on, or concerns will start to arise around the 3rd, 4th, 5th grades and can continue to go up. And then when it comes to that responsible decision making and optimistic thinking, you'll see that flag more with some of the older students typically, but again, that can give and take depending on the students.
And we'll have SEL teams by grade level, so they'll be able to drill down in their grade level data to see what the needs are of that grade level and help build curriculum and intervention support for that specific grade level too, which is something in the last year and a half, we've done that with kindergarten. And Dr. Staub and I talked, and we said, the next move would be let's do it for the rest of the grade levels too, which is what we're doing this summer.
And we know that this is important because when students are not self-regulated, their body and their mind's not calm, we know that their body and mind are not open to learning. So we need to ensure that this is a priority in addition to what we're teaching.
Questions? All right, so next steps for strategic plan goal 1, reading, math, and writing skills. We're obviously still going to continue to focus on using best instructional practices. Our coaches are constantly bringing new data to the table, new instructional ideas and pieces to PLCs and in the classrooms. We've got our Minooka 201 literacy plan. We've got that laid out. The only thing we need left to do that is we're going to tie our strategic plan goals to that plan. But we have submitted that to the draft to the state to look at. But we're going to assess, monitor, and analyze all of our growth in our literacy skill areas. So that's speaking, listening, reading, writing, vocab, fluency, phonemic awareness, all of those things. We're going to look at that. We are going to hone in on the explicit phonics instruction, K4, while continuing to balance all the other components of Scarborough's rope, so vocab, reading comprehension, and decoding and coding skills too. Professional development centered around our curriculum and best practices. Professional development as it relates to using data to drive instruction and best instructional practices. Again, continuing that PLC work and just increasing our data literacy with our staff too. In terms of goal 2, we are going to review and update our SEL curriculum and have our SEL grade level teams. Continue professional development with safe and civil schools through CHAMPS and some co-teaching. And development on relationship building, sense of belonging, Significant 72, some of those things that you guys have heard previously. And I know the coaches spoke about it briefly, but this is a huge one. The review and communicate updated MTSS procedures. Our staff does so many good things, but our system of supports weren't always talking to each other. So the coaches, primarily Holly and Laura, have done an amazing job of working with our interventionists, working with teachers. They met with social workers today to really try to just centralize our multi-tiered system of support so that academic data and SEL data and behavior data and attendance data start to talking to each other so we can look at the child holistically and diagnose and intervene instead of, like, for example, if a kid is missing a bunch of school but we think they have a math skill deficit, sometimes we're not talking to each other. Maybe it's not a math intervention. Maybe there's an attendance intervention that we need for this kid. So it's kind of getting all those pieces together. And then increasing student voice through clubs and Panorama, and our ML and special ed supports in the classroom and through the curriculum too. So those are all things that we are working on too. And then goal 3, that working environment. Again, those SEL teams kind of honing in on that grade level data of the SEL needs and updating kind of a scope and sequence of our SEL curriculum is key. Curricular meeting reviews. I think I've met with everybody at least once, but math and ELA I've met anywhere between 3 or 4 times this year just to try to get my hands on understanding the data and the curriculum. We'll continue to do those things and then provide professional development or learning opportunities through those things. And then how do we move step next with our PLC time and process? Teachers are requesting more time. We're trying to figure out scheduling wise how we can make that happen. And we're going to continue to do that. So maybe it's not just one PLC data piece that they're looking at, but maybe we can start incorporate. Maybe there's a reading piece they look at and a math piece. So those are all things that we're working on. Additionally, we've got a lot of year-end meetings planned with our admin and each of their building teams to really build coherence and efficacy with their staff and their teams, working together as a team as opposed to groups, and then as a district, really finding our focus. We can't just say we're going to focus on goal 1 and then just leave the door wide open. So we're really going to try to narrow our focus a little bit so we can all be a little more aligned with how we are moving the needle together as a district. So with that, is there any other questions? I talked for way too long and I apologize.
No, I always say this is such like, I was thinking of Mr. McGowan for like the first meeting. This is like the most data we get at one time and your brain's kind of like swimming by the end of the meeting. But Mrs. McHero does a great job of presenting it. And as always, anybody that comes up with questions after the fact, relay them back to Superintendent Kinder. We can clarify this information as well. This is always, heavy in a good way, meeting with just all the data. I appreciate having the data points to, make sure that we're seeing the growth we need to see. And then just always the appreciation that the plan is already in place of how to improve it before we've even seen, the final numbers. So always very well done. Any additional questions that you haven't asked already?
I'd just like to say, I think it's good to see the coaches here before you and their enthusiasm and their excitement. And then, while the data is not awesome, the data is definitely we're seeing, and I know that there's a correlation between what the coaches are doing and what the data is showing, and it's nice to see the progression going north and either steady or going south.
Yeah.
It for sure is a better conversation than last year at this point in time.
I agree. So good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. I'm okay. This next one should be short and sweet, I think. I'm okay.
Mrs. Shanholzer, Mrs. Lori, Mr. Blount has to leave, so if you just want to note that he's leaving, thank you. Go ahead, next
thank you.
slideshow.
All right, so just some quick handbook updates. I've worked with Jeff, our athletic director, to make sure those things have lined up. Our district nurse, Mrs. Pelnarsh, to make sure health-wise we're updated things. But a couple of updates that came through Ed Committee that we just want you guys to kind of be aware of is the accelerated placement, GPA explanation, and electronic devices. Those were kind of three of the big major pieces. Some of the other ones were just like, we updated language to be a little clearer in the handbook. So the first two, the accelerated placement, we updated the early entrance into kindergarten. A big goal was just improve communication and transparency. So there's a visible checklist you'll see. I guess it's going to take me there. So that the parents can see all the things that they need to do when they are requesting that their child be looked at for early entrance into kindergarten. And then access to those documents. So we looked to provide that for them as well, and that's in the handbook. What we did do is we updated the requirements for the academic testing data. So we moved from the 85th percentile to the 65th percentile. We are doing our best to look at the kid holistically. So it's not just like, are they smart enough? Are they reaching the achievement levels? But then we're not looking at the social development of the kids. So we have a social development assessment that they take. We either can go to their preschool or daycare and do that, or they come into MPC and we do kind of a social assessment there. In addition, the committee felt the 85th percentile was too high. Like, you're expecting the kid to almost like surpass kindergarten expectations with being in the 85th percentile. So looked at some other ones, looked at the data of the number of kids that we've had previously, and thought 65% was a good mark to look to approve somebody into early entrance into kindergarten. Bless you. I did look at I've got the last 3 years worth of data to be able to look at that, and there was 1 to 2 kids that would have met that criteria. So it's not like it's so, like, we want to create gates, not fences for people, like an opportunity for this to happen. And it kind of felt like having that 85th percentile there, like there wasn't a possibility of kids being able to achieve that.
Adrian, if I remember correctly, we were basically asking the students to perform at the beginning of kindergarten as though a typical kindergarten would perform at the end of kindergarten at the 85th percentile.
Yes, and that's not fair.
So is 65 still too high, though, you think, or?
I think it's a good starting point.
Based on the equivalents that we looked at, the 65th percentile would be appropriate.
So if you look at our kindergartners at the end of the year with the data that I showed you in the previous presentation, I think that's a good number for us to utilize.
And real quick, what is the improved communication? I mean, how do we communicate? Is it email? Is it the student conferences? Or what's the improvement?
So part of it is,
texting,
well, these are potentially people that want to get their, child into kindergarten a year early. So a lot of times they're not, it's a new kid to our district. So It's posted on our website. We do try to share that information out. People call and ask questions, and we take them to it, and then myself or Lori will email them all the info so they can see. There's an ages to stages questionnaire that they can do, the daycare can do. They can see what we're looking for in that social observation. But yeah, we're just trying to get it out there. I think before maybe we weren't as explicit about here's all the steps. They didn't realize kind of all the behind the scenes background, like testing in terms of social testing and academic testing that needed to be done. So we just wanted to make a kind of a visual checklist for them to be able to see it and know where their kid was at with that.
Good, thanks.
Yep. And then GPA calculations is typically a question we get because different classes and different instructional minutes are different based on your content area. And minute-wise at the intermediate school versus the junior high, there are classes that are weighted a little different because of the amount of minutes a kid spends in ELA versus math versus science and social studies and that. So we just wanted to clear it up. Mr. Souza and his tech team actually have calculations created for parents. So we provided the link in there so that they can ask, because we do, if they have a kid at the junior high and MIS that have the exact same grades, they could have different GPA calculations because of the amount of time spent in those classes. Those will be a little bit more aligned because the junior high is going to a block schedule. But we wanted to provide that information for our parents. Additionally, I know Superintendent Kinder mentioned earlier, but talking about our data pieces and whether they kind of corroborate the same story or not, we are currently reviewing our district grading practices to see how we can shore some of those things up too. So more to come as we look to do that. It was just, that takes a lot of time and data and historical analysis, and I just wasn't ready to check that off my list on year one. But we're getting there. We're having conversations about it, and our administrative team is wrapping their brains around what good things would come from that or what negative impacts it might have, so where we can kind of shore up some of our grading practices there. Okay. The one that is probably the most interesting to board just because of some of the proposed legislation coming out is the electronic devices. So I did kind of side by side show what the language was last year and what the new language is, just for you to take a look at. So I'll give you a minute to read it. I won't read it out loud to you, but I'll give you a minute to take a look at it. The legislation could potentially require districts to set policies banning wireless devices. And the research is out there that too much screen time is not a good thing. So we want to be conscious of that. And we think our new language is kind of fitting of what we would like to do and what the proposed legislation is, knowing that we will have to, the junior high is in support of kind of tightening up some of the things that they've traditionally been allowed students to do over the course of the last year or two with their electronic devices. So go ahead and take a look at that. So is there anything in there, like feedback-wise, that you guys have for us with the new language?
Coming from a school who instituted similar this year, I think that it's going to be a move in the right direction, and that I think that by Halloween, every teacher is going to notice the significant impact.
Disagree. You see studies of like colleges talking about the same thing, just when they're telling kids to study for exam, you go put your phone in a different room. Like just even having it and getting those notifications while you're trying to work, it impacts you.
As a parent, I wasn't sure I was on board, and when my district sent it out initially, I was like, oh boy, we're gonna hear it. But they may have from a couple of families, but overall, it's been a huge, huge difference in the engagement level for junior high kids specifically. not having those devices. One of my students, one of the days, opened his phone, turned it on, he had 65 notifications. 65 times throughout the day, his attention would have been pulled away, even if he wasn't going to his phone out of habit. It was just 65 times the phone would have gone to him.
I read, it was a couple months ago, but on average, the average middle school kid will get 194 notifications throughout the course of a school day, on average.
Well, and I shouldn't rat them out, but a lot of my kids in the beginning of the year, when they were first getting their phone out at the end of the day, said it was all their friends at Manuka were texting them throughout the day. So they're sneaky with those. They know how to get to them where we can't see them and guide them in the right direction to put it away. So I think that being a little more strict about having them out at all is going to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to mention my appreciation for the education committee and the conversation that had during that time. There was a lot of people in the room and a lot of opinions or dialogue, but there wasn't a lot of differences of opinion. There was just a lot of agreement that it's better to be proactive than reactive, and I think the education committee was useful to really kind of play things out and hear things out. So I think that was a really good thing for the committee to do, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Good point.
Our students in my classroom have them locked up to, and the classrooms that don't, the behavior difference even in our rooms is massively different. So I think this is going to be a huge improvement. Sorry, Mrs. Monson, go ahead.
Oh, that's totally fine. I'm very happy to see this because as a child with a phone, they need to get put away. They're so disruptive, and I'm really glad to see the language in there about the watches. It's right there. It's constant, like, hello, hello, hello. So I'm glad to see that. On that note, what do you plan to do as far as sharing this with the community? And how do you plan to approach that? Because, yes.
Yeah, it's a big change, right?
Yeah, it is definitely a big change, and there will be some kind of phases of communication with general awareness, and then as we get into the school year, it will be more specific information regarding building specific policies. Currently in pre-K 6, this is our current policy. We don't have a lot of issues with disturbances or with students having devices that are not off and out of sight. Of course, there may be an occasional one that we would deal with. It's really more the junior high where the kids tend to have more freedom, more access, more kids already have devices. So the building administration, the building team is working on the specific procedures for the junior high. Those will be communicated in multiple modes of communication and then communicated at Find Your Way and open house. And obviously those expectations will be set when students begin in the building as well. And so we want parents to kind of understand the why and the what. And then of course, if parents have questions or concerns, that they understand that you still can contact your child. We still have email, we still have other methods of communication. There's phones in all of the classrooms, there's phones in the offices. So if there is a need for communication, of course there's exceptions for students who have special needs or medical, documented medical need for an electronic device. So we will take all of those things into consideration. I think Aaron's cutting me off over there. No. We'll take all of those things into consideration because we want everyone to feel comfortable with that adjustment. And then from there, it'll just be the consistent enforcement of the expectations. At the junior high, currently in most of our instructional settings, they're off and away unless there's permission. However, you know how that works, right? With kids having the ability to have distractions or, we allow for exceptions. And then in our common spaces like the cafeteria and things of that nature, it's far more liberal in terms of the students' ability to use that. So it's going to be an adjustment. Our seventh graders, they will be used to it, our rising seventh graders, because that's how it is at Manuka Intermediate every single day. Our rising eighth graders, it will be an adjustment for, but we will make sure to communicate that early and in multiple reiterations of that to support them with that transition. And then obviously we will see and feel the differences from having kind of that boundary set, which we know is a healthy life skill that you need to maintain anyway. And many of us adults could serve well from someone setting some boundaries for us too. So it will be a process, but one that we definitely feel is the right one for our learning community.
Do the students still turn in, like after reading something, the thing that was in the planner? Like here are our rules and regulations,
So
and they
that
sign
is
it.
part
turn
of
in?
our registration now, that the
Okay.
parents and the students sign off that they understand that. Additionally, the administrative teams spend the first couple of days highlighting and hitting some of those points too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and just so everyone is aware, the policy, you can't really see the small print there, but it is essentially that devices have to be off and stored away out of sight. So that could be locker, that could be backpack. However, if there are concerns, it could range from a verbal warning to their device needing to be stored in a locked pouch, similar to what many districts around us use, similar to where they would check it in at the office in a locked pouch on the daily. But I think for the majority, of students, they would understand and kind of adapt with the expectation. And we have some additional supports for students who need a little bit more support in those areas. But we're certainly respecting the fact that these are expensive devices that parents have equipped their children with, and they're used to the ability to contact them. So we want to do this in a structured way that can give parents peace of mind when it comes to safety, but also peace of mind when it comes to, the importance of having that device. My student needs it after school, or they need it for sports, or I want them to have it on them while they're traveling home. And we respect that and we understand that. We're just trying to protect that space for the classroom environment, the school environment. It supports learning, obviously socialization, and many of the, go back to the data, the social skills that we're working to ensure that we can develop in a healthy school environment.
Okay, thank you guys.
All right, next up we have board topics. We're gonna watch TV. Just kidding. Board topics. I have just a couple quick things. One, I just wanted to thank Mrs. Shanholzer and district office for putting on a great retirement and years of service celebration for our 201 staff. I think that was well appreciated. It was literally like a dust tornado outside during it, so that was an interesting experience. But I think all in all, it went very well. I enjoyed celebrating our staff. A reminder to the board, a couple things. One, let me know what committees you may be interested in for this next 2 years here. And then also a reminder that the conference registration will be coming up, so Mrs. Shanholzer will be sending out all that information coming up, because we're already getting to the point of registering for board conference. Happens in June 1st. June 1st, she'll be on it, first thing in the morning. Any other board topics tonight? Wowie, all right. Administrative reports.
Mac, we missed the sound of your voice. Come on back up. No, I know she has a couple brief additional notes for us.
Just a couple things that I wanted to note on my report. Under curriculum and instruction, library book selection and maintenance procedures for our library. I know that was a board topic that was brought up earlier in the year, and last week, Haley Bazan, our district tech coach, with our K-4 media teachers, we were able to, we kind of had a draft going, and we were able to look at some other districts and what they use, and we have created a district procedure and guideline for procurement and weeding out library materials. So the document's in this draft stage, sharing it with admin so that they can look at, how the media teacher library associate's gonna work under the supervision of the administrator, using several credible sources to make sure age appropriateness, it's on some of the good award lists and that sort of thing, like a conglomerate of that, in addition to weeding currently library materials. So maybe stuff that hasn't been checked out in tens of years, or maybe we've got an outdated computer book from the 70s that doesn't really work anymore. So and then additionally, we will have kind of a procedure when parents or guardians are questioning materials. We'll have a form for them to fill out, like they want us to reconsider this because they don't think it's appropriate to be in our library. So all of those things will be kind of laid out in that. And I just wanted to kind of touch base on that. I think the other ones, in some way, shape, or form, I've talked about tonight because I've talked too much, but I just wanted to bring your attention to that, okay? All right.
Okay, I don't think HR or business have any specific updates tonight, but they are working hard. I can assure you of that. We'll have some updates coming up for you in the next month. Mr. Souza, did you have anything for tech for us?
Just, tech team's gonna be working hard as usual to get the live stream for graduation ceremony working, so that was posted and circulated, so you'll see us out there with cameras and open it up.
Okay, so to reiterate that, there will be a live stream for our junior high graduations, plural, on Wednesday, and there will be live stream for those who would like to enjoy from the comfort of their own home or do not have a ticket to attend. Dr. Stepp.
All right, I promise I'll keep this brief. I was going to tease you guys that I had a 50-slide deck, a 50-slide deck to go through, but I won't do that. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things with our summer programming. So in the world of student services, by this time in the year, we are living with a leg in this year and a leg in next year, and then somewhere in between, we're in the summer as well. So right now, just want to highlight that we have our summer programming going on, and although the registration for Minooka Reading Camp, Minooka Math Camp, and Enrichment has already closed, we still will have registration for Summer Bridge, which is a bridge into next school year. That will open up June 2nd, and registration will run through June 27th. The actual program will be in July, and that is all online. My own children have always participated in it. It's just a real great way for them to get ready and kind of like refresh their brains and get ready again for school in a very non-threatening, kind of relaxed atmosphere. And then there are also numerous lists of camps in the community on our website. If you go onto the family information or the parent information section, so families are very welcome to look into that if they are looking for some fun ways to get their children involved this summer. I also wanted to highlight that our health services are partnering again this summer with Morris Hospital to host the sports physical clinic on June 13th at Minooka Junior High, and the proceeds from this are donated from from Morris Hospital to Minooka Junior High Athletic Department. So that's a great opportunity for students here in the community to participate in that. And our instructional coaches, and Ms. McCarroll alluded to this already a little bit, but right now we're doing a lot of professional development, and we've made a commitment to ensure that our staff have access to effective and efficient professional development year-round. So this summer we'll be putting out a flyer shortly this week, I think probably tomorrow maybe, that highlights some of the different professional development that we'll have available to our staff in the tune of Wit and Wisdom virtual learning, a multilingual professional development bingo card, professional development through the Regional Office of Education, as well as our Min 201 podcast PD. So we have put together some really great podcasts, and then the teachers, staff can listen to those podcasts and then complete a sheet to show that they have demonstrated that, or that they have completed that, and then they can get professional development credits for it. So in addition to that, we are also planning for everybody to come back in August already. So that's some of the different things that are going on, and we're very excited about all of those details, and more information can be found in my report as well. So thank you. No questions?
Any questions? Okay, that's it. We're in the home stretch. We officially have 4 more days with students, and let me tell you, there's been no slowing of pace. So this year has kind of flown by in a flurry, and we're finishing strong. If you look at all the reports from all of our building administrators, there is just nonstop family engagement, events, celebrations, recognizing the hard work of our kids and our staff. There's competitions and performances and all of the amazing things showcasing our students and the efforts of our staff. and we are finishing strong. So graduation for the junior high on Wednesday. We'll be crossing a bridge for our little ones going into kindergarten on Thursday, and there's been a lot of work to support those transitions. So we're very appreciative of the staff efforts for that, and like Dr. Staub said, we're working hard to finish this year strong, but very much working into the next year. We're picking up the pace with registration. We still have a number. You'll continue to get communications from Mr. Souza. We encourage you to register so we can get class lists and schedules and all of those good things finalized. And then we're continuing the charge of planning into the new school year, so we'll provide some updates for you in June on some of the other efforts that have been ongoing. And here we are. We're in the final countdown to the last day of school, which will be an early release on this Friday. So we're almost there. We're almost there. So thank you to the board for your support and to the incredible team. I mean, tonight was a great snapshot. You heard from certain voices here in the room tonight, but there are so many other tentacles of support that are just working tirelessly day in and day out in our district. Many of our leaders sitting in the room here tonight, as well as many, many staff members. And so Dr. McCarroll mentioned it. We're going to be working with the admin starting right next week. We're not getting much of a break. And also our building teams, which made up of teacher and staff leaders, who are going to help in the effort to reflect on this year and then really set a good foundation for our continuous improvement efforts launching into the new school year. So I am super excited to have this year with this incredible team, and there'll be even more great things to come. And we have a lot of work ahead of us, but a lot to celebrate. So thank you all, and I appreciate your time and support.
Okay, with that, I need a motion to go to executive or closed session for the purpose of discussing superintendent evaluation and ongoing negotiations.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of superintendent evaluation and ongoing negotiations.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries, and we do not expect any action after closed session.